Hi Lionheart folks, it's Lev. Welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new, I use he and pronouns. Happy New Year. It's a new year, 2022. I don't really know what else to say, but Happy New Year, and I hope all of you have a good year. Well, hopefully all of you have a good year. And yeah, I really don't know what else to say for the New Year thing. Anyway, today's video, I wanted to talk about trans gatekeeping, what that means, and what that looks like, and how it's problematic. I do want to preface this by saying when I say trans, I mean trans and gender diverse people, everyone in the community, not just binary trans people such as trans men and trans women. I just say trans for short, but it includes all trans and gender diverse folks. So what is this trans gatekeeping? And what does that mean? The way I explain it and conceptualize it in my head is like a series of gates and people policing and setting rules in order of setting rules and expectations and standards and this criteria that must be met before I can pass the first gate and then onto the second gate. It's gatekeeping, in my experience, has not just been going past one gate, going past multiple gates that are policed in a way, and there are people who say you can pass or you cannot pass this gate. Basically, I have to prove that I'm trans in order to access certain services, access certain things that I need to affirm my gender, and just proving that I'm trans. Yeah, basically to access the services that I need to support myself in not only my transition but my health and well-being in general. One example of trans gatekeeping is before May 2020, people, trans and gender diverse folks who wish to change their legally recognized sex, they don't recognize gender, it's legally recognized sex, which is completely wrong because people assigned female at birth who are trans are not women, and people assigned male at birth who are trans are not men. Like, my sex is female, it's never gonna change, but I am a man in terms of my gender, and yeah, that's a side rant, but yes, for example, changing one's legally recognized sex before May last year, people who wish to get their legally recognized sex change had to go through gender affirming surgery. Basically, trans folks have to get gender affirming surgery before they can be legally recognized for the gender that they are. And this sounds confusing because I just said it's recognized sex, but it is what I guess in general, when people say male, they assume a man, and when they see female, they assume a woman. I don't agree with that, but that's the system we live in, or I live in my state in Victoria, Australia, and that's what I have to roll with. But yeah, gender affirming surgery, have to get gender affirming surgery before legally changing recognized sex, and that's one example of gatekeeping. Luckily for me, I got my legally recognized sex and gender changed. Legally recognized sex and name both in one in March of this year, so the rule or requirement of you have to get gender affirming surgery before you can legally change your recognized sex is gone, and I'm very lucky in that sense. But it's still problematic because I guess especially it was problematic for before they got rid of that rule, because having surgery isn't the easiest thing to get, and it's not affordable for everyone, and there are reasons why trans folks don't get gender affirming surgery, like if, for example, financial or not accessible in terms of where they live, it's not safe to do so, or they're living in a household where it's not safe for them to medically transition. And there are like 10 million different reasons why some trans people do not get gender affirming surgery, and for these people, having to prove their gender by getting gender affirming surgery is just more, it's very harmful because of the dysphoria, because of not being recognized for who they are. And even as a trans guy who is going through medical transitioning, if that rule was still in place and I had to wait until I got top surgery before I'm legally recognized as a man and legally recognized as a man on all of my ID and all of that, I would just be living in so much dysphoria. Someone looks at my ID, it's like, oh, female, and it'll just destroy my mental health, and I wouldn't even know what to do, to be honest. Another example I've experienced with is top surgery and accessing hormones. I'm gonna start by talking about accessing hormones. So I'm a sign female at birth. So I'm currently on testosterone. Almost my 1 year anniversary actually on January 12th. That's for a different video. But to get hormones, I had to go through many consultations with my GP. It wasn't like I walk in to one appointment and be like, I have gender dysphoria. I want to get on testosterone, and then I walk out of that consult with a prescription for hormones, and I get hormones injected into me on the same day. Like, it doesn't work like that. I mean, ideally, yeah, that would be great, but unfortunately, the system I live in doesn't work like that. And so I had many consultations over many months, and I had to prove that I have gender dysphoria and basically justify why I need and want to go on testosterone. It's not like with other medical conditions when I go into a GP, see a GP, I'm like, oh, I'm experiencing nausea, and they give me like anti-nausea pills or stuff to make me not feel sick, or I say I have like acid reflux, and then they give me a prescription for something. It's not that simple. Also, like, I come in and I have gender dysphoria. I mean, like, okay, see you many times throughout many months to make sure that, you know, going on hormones is something that is good for you, and that, you know, you have gender dysphoria and that this thing will help you. In top surgery, I'd say there are more gates that I have to go past in order to finally access surgery. The first gate is having to find a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist to do a WPATH gender assessment with me. WPATH is World Professional Association for Transgender Health, and they have guidelines about hormones and who should access hormones, and criteria that needs to be met in order to access different things in terms of medically transitioning. The first thing is, yeah, finding there's like barely anyone. Like, there are a lot of psychs in general, but people who specifically do gender assessment for the purpose of gender affirming surgery, very hard to find. And then I'm currently linked into one, and then the second gate I have to bypass is proving my gender dysphoria, because one of the WPATH guidelines to accessing top surgery is well documented persistent gender dysphoria. So basically, I have to prove that I experience gender dysphoria in order to access top surgery. And that's not the only criteria, there are like other criteria as well. But in general, I basically have to prove that I'm trans in order to get gender affirming surgery. Another thing is that it's costly. It's not cheap. Like, having like 2-3 sessions for my psych to get enough info from me and know me well enough to write a gender assessment report, and then there's a separate fee for actually writing the gender report that's going to be sent to my surgeon, and then there's also top surgery consult fees, and then there's also the fees for top surgery itself, and then the fees for hospital care and all of that too. Like, it's already hard enough for trans people to access affirming services, let alone having to pay shit tons of money in order to receive this sort of medical support in one's transition journey. It's very frustrating because cisgender people don't have to prove that they're cisgender in order to access certain medical support, or even, I guess, any healthcare support in general. But trans people we have to prove ourselves, prove to other people that we are actually trans, and then prove to other people that we may experience gender dysphoria in order to receive the necessary support. It feels like I have to justify my identity and justify my existence as a trans person to other people in order. The system we live in is just, well, the system I live in, at least in Victoria, in Australia, is fucked up in that way. And I'm also aware that in the UK, like, there's been that incident with the NHS and someone who was transitioning, and then detransition afterwards, because I forgot the exact reason. Maybe they realized that they aren't trans, and then I think like people in the UK have to, children in the UK or young people in the UK who want to access puberty blockers have to go for like the court of law or something, which is so fucked up. Like, doing all that, having to go through the court of law in order to access medical support, puberty blockers. It's basically like we're being controlled in terms of what we can and cannot do, and what we can and cannot access by cisgender people in power policing every single damn gate. Because for me, as a trans guy, if I was in a position of power and had the ability to make these types of decisions, I would get rid of all of these stupid gatekeeping requirements currently in place in the system, because it's absolute bullshit. And if I was in power, I would cancel. I realized in the last clip I stopped the camera too early before I finished my sentence. So yes, I would, if I was in a position of power, I would cancel all of it. All of it meaning all of these stupid rules and regulations and criteria in place in order for trans people to access their required support. What I find quite funny and interesting is that I don't understand why trans people accessing medically affirming support is the focus of things, and why this thing is being policed and controlled. For example, and to be honest, with informed consent and like medical professionals sharing with people who wish to access medical transition, it's like the professional giving us all of the information, we make an informed decision about whether we want to proceed with it or not, instead of having to prove the gender dysphoria stuff. Like, for example, alcohol is dangerous and people drink all the time. People go party Friday, Saturday nights and get wasted. But there's like, I mean, there are some rules, like you can't be you can't be under 18 when you buy alcohol, and you can't drink alcohol in public places and all that stuff, but that's not really gatekeeping people from accessing alcohol and using alcohol. And I've confidently say that alcohol does more damage to people's healths than trans people accessing hormones such as testosterone and estrogen, or young trans people accessing puberty blockers. Just remember, it's not like someone goes to a bottle shop and wishes to purchase alcohol, and then there's like the salesperson there being like, so why do you want to buy this alcohol? What are you gonna do with it? Can you prove to me that you really need this alcohol? Like, otherwise I'm not gonna sell it to you. Can you prove to me why you really want this alcohol and its purpose and like everything? Like, that doesn't happen. But with trans people accessing like hormones or gender affirming surgery, it's like, so prove it. So prove that you really need this. Prove that you're actually trans. Fucking hell. In summary, trans gatekeeping is like having to bypass, I don't know if bypass is the right word, having to go through many guard controlled gates and having to prove my own trans identity in order to access the services that I need along my journey. Thanks for watching, folks, and I will see you in the next video.